Hello, everyone. This is TJ Kennedy here from Fractional Source, and we're here on our Fractional Source podcast with Kevin Sofen today, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different subjects. Kevin is involved in not just the fire service, which we'll touch on here, in technology and innovation, but a lot of different areas that I think will be super fun in the public safety tech and gov tech evolution that's going on in the world right now. And super fun to have you here, Kevin. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on today. I'm in a little my remote studio here, aka my parents' side bedroom here up at our house in Wisconsin. So excuse kind of the bedroom background, but nonetheless, great to be here and always good to spend time with you, TJ.
Well, it's that time of year where it's great to be up at the lake. Everybody in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the Midwest here, if you can be on a lake anywhere near a weekend, it's a good time to do it.
Yep, lake life is best life.
100%. Well, let's talk a little bit about your career and background, Kevin. It's super unique, I think, for our audience. And, what inspired you to focus on, public safety, health, technology? You and I have crossed paths for many, many years here in the public safety and tech world. And I think you just want to share some of that with our audience. It'd be great.
For sure, TJ. Well, it all kind of started randomly when I sat next to Paul Darley at some golf tournaments. It was a family friend golf tournament, and I told him about some of the work that I was doing in college with studying water, hydrology, as well as studying Chinese. And he had mentioned, hey, we do a lot of business in China, and we have a growing water treatment division. So literally right after college, I just sort of randomly got a job opportunity with W.S. Darley and Company. Darley, it's a 117-year-old family-owned company based in the Midwest, manufacturing in Chippewa Falls, headquartered in Itasca, other locations in Janesville, Iowa. Just classic Midwest, really through and through manufacturing and engineering company that makes the best pumps in the world, as well as distributes a range of products. And so, from a very early age, I just started getting my hands on with technology and kind of figuring out what does the fire service want, how should we speak to them. And so I've never been a firefighter myself, but I've now had the fortune of working within public safety for about 13, 14 years. And working with Darley I still continue to work with Darley. It's been eye-opening in the sense that I was just kind of figuring out how do we sell not only traditional equipment, whether it's hose, PPE, nozzles, pumps, and trucks, which Darley has done historically very well. But it was kind of around 2017 where it was, hey, this thing called a drone is starting to become a thing. What is it? We started to build drones in the basement. We were hacking together pieces from around the world and building it. And we actually sold one to the New Zealand Fire Service in like 2018, one that we literally built in the basement. We then realized soon after that Darley, we were actually better at selling other people's drones and software and hardware, and then of course then the DJI and all the other companies came on the block, and then same with virtual reality came on the street around 2017 or so, and both VR and drones were things that I was just tinkering with, building, and really figuring out not only is this a cool toy, but how can this be a tool with various life-saving capabilities. And I really, since 2017, I've just been finding ways to enhance the products, simplify the products, make it better, faster, safer, easier for firefighter adoption, and have been doing that since 2017. I've now also kind of around that same time as when I started the Smart Firefighting podcast. That was kind of born out of the NIST NFPA research roadmap to the future of smart firefighting. It's an awesome document, but it's also 300 pages long. Not many people are going to read that except nerds like ourselves. So I thought, how could we turn that report to life and provide some context behind it? So I just started putting microphones and cameras in front of people's faces and started talking about smart apparatus, smart cities, connected firefighter, virtual reality training, artificial intelligence. And I've now created over 325 podcasts. I've done over 75 virtual events. And I love helping connect the dots between entrepreneurs, .govs, .org, .edus, distribution companies like Darley, startups like Ascent Integrated Tech, things like that. And I've now, in the past couple of years, been very deep into still working with Darley, but also now evolving to work with other groups like the International Association of Fire Chiefs. They host a conference called Technology Summit International. So the last 3 years, I've helped plan, promote, execute that show. And I consider that show to be the premier event around technology adoption and public safety. And then have had the fortune of now working alongside Ascent Integrated Tech, who are making smartwatches operationally relevant for the fire service to help understand where are my people and how are they doing. And now I'm just continue to be in the weeds. I love working in startup world. I love working in distribution side. I enjoy working the nonprofit side, and I'm kind of just hungry to continue to find ways to bridge that gap between technology and public safety. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do it alongside people like yourself, TJ.
Well, thanks, Kevin. It's been great to work with you over the years and to watch smart firefighting grow as a concept, and certainly your podcast, but also just the industry changed so much. And I think back to when I started in the fire service in the late '80s as a volunteer and then a professional firefighter starting in the early '90s. We used Darley pumps everywhere I went, whether I was on the East Coast or out west when I moved to Park City, Utah. And it was just such a common thing. So it's great to see this 117-year-old company where you got your start, but also, bringing technology to Paul and the Darley team and others, and his embracing of that too, because I mean, he's kind of old school when we think about the fire service and all the apparatus and tools and equipment that have been such a key part of that. I mean, he's central and his family's been central to that. But to see how he's embraced that, I'm proud of that too. I think that all of us can continue to learn and embrace, whether it's AI, it's VR, it's drones, it's other technology and wearables. Certainly in my leadership at FirstNet, I felt that the connected first responder and having that connectivity to wearables, to IoT, to handheld devices, to vehicles, to drones, to aircraft was always going to come, and now it's here and it's exciting. It's been fun to do the same thing in New Zealand on the NGCC Public Safety Network board there as well, to see that other countries are doing what we did here with FirstNet in the US, and other networks are starting to get built around the world. And there's just so much more that will come once that baseline's in place where everybody can be connected, and certainly satellite and directed device are going to be the next steps that add another element to some of that deep rural and difficult connectivity space. So to me, we're just at the very beginning. I know it feels like you and I have been in the space for a long time, and me older than you with all this gray hair up here, but
I got some grades, so don't discredit
good.
those.
That makes me feel better. But at the same point, I think there's a lot of fun stuff. And what I want to really focus on today is a little bit about what's gotten us here, but even really important, just like what exists today, and then we'll kind of end on what's going to be coming in the future. I think a lot of what you and I talk about regularly, if we talk to normal everyday people who aren't technology nerds in public safety that live, eat, and breathe this every day, they think what we're talking about is future and not today. And so I don't know if you can give a couple cool examples of successful tech adoption of real things that exist today that the average listener out there, even if they're in government, probably don't believe actually exists and, is a working cool technology today. I mean, are there some things that you've seen that you just think are pretty impressive and that people should be aware of?
For sure. And yeah, the framing of all this is extremely important because a lot of this stuff does exist, but it's how to make it operationally relevant for the fire service. And I myself was one of those people thinking, hey, here's this cool widget. You should buy it. But then the fire service is like, well, okay, once I buy it, what will I do with it? How will I extract value out of it? How am I going to show that I'm going to get a measurable ROI spending taxpayer dollars on this? So that's always a challenge. And I think you do see a lot of technology companies have that mindset of, here's the thing, buy it. But really, that is where we kind of have started to see more of this evolution of really having the fire service continue to be open to embracing new technology, but also being the ones that are in the driver's seat. And there is sometimes that adage of, oh, well, you don't know what you need. But actually, there is a growing amount and quite a few members of the fire service that are very open about what their challenges are and would be very open to trying stuff. But it does need to be done in the right way. And you have heard that adage of 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. Firefighters hate two things, changing the way things are. But like, I will die on the sword of that. It's absolutely not true. The fire service is actually very open to change. It's just a little bit slower than some other industries and that what other people would like. Some of the challenges are from the training implementation, from the getting into the training manuals, into the different training protocols. But you've seen some really cool examples. I mean, even let's just say from an AI perspective, I was talking to the head of the technology council just yesterday, Scott Roseberry from Garland Fire Department. He was talking about how some of his colleagues are starting to use AI radio transcription to do post-incident reports, and
Mhm.
then being able to help speed up the time that basically they transcribe all their radio calls, and then they transcribe it, and they have a prompt that allows them to then put that into a template that shows this is who was there, this is what happened, here were 10 of the key words. And of course, the human then still needs to review it. But when you're thinking about after you get off a full shift, and if you were just out for 5, 10, 20 hours, like you're exhausted, you want to go home, you want to see your wife or husband, and you want to go to your kid's soccer game, whatever. And if you have a tool now that kind of just gets you from 0 to 1, and now you just need to spend 10, 20 minutes on it as opposed to staring at a blank screen, that's a cool use case of AI.
I love
And
that. And I just want to clarify for our listeners out there who haven't spent 12 hours, all night long up on different fire and EMS calls, and some of them are back to back, and you have no time to do your reports. And, when I started, it was on paper. Then we went to computers, then we went to laptops, then we went to tablets. And, now the reality is we're talking about AI transcription of all the radio and probably even, getting CAD and dispatch data along with all those radio transmissions and having the ability to have 80% of your report, to your point, on the screen where you're editing a report and adding, flavor and accuracy to the data, but you don't have to think about, I mean, one of the biggest, we used to call dispatch on the phone and be like, okay, what was our dispatch time? What was our arrival time, right? How many other units were there? What support do we get from state police versus local police versus sheriff's department? Who all responded to this from other parts of the county? Like all that data exists electronically today and can be, even those transmissions about what we're talking about and what support and what happened during that incident. And it's time stamped, right? So, how long did it take to get into the home? How long did it take to rescue the person? How long did it take to get them off and transported to the hospital? Key parts of a report. You're saying, basically we're leveraging AI and LLMs to be able to make that more effective and efficient for that fire captain or
absolutely.
lieutenant.
It's a great example of where to use AI. There are definitely certain situations of when not to use AI. One other good example of how I've seen AI used, and again, just very simple example, you can use Copilot or chat, but when thinking about, hey, there is there's a potential flood alert in this part of the city, and there is a Spanish speaking area population in this area, and we need to get a press release out as well as a radio ad that is going to let people know there's an issue, take proper precautions, and get going. And being able to do it in English and then translate it to Spanish in both the written and audio version, and being able to get that out almost immediately. And now again, there's the colloquial tense and nuances within that. So that's free. That's something you can do. It's simple, and again, it's not like it's going to necessarily completely change your operations, but those were two, of course, AI being this hot topic right now, and there are a lot of other significant concerns, and we could spend a whole episode talking about the ethical dynamics and when to use it and where to use it, and then the data security stuff. And granted, those are all valid, but again, there's a lot of stuff like that are very practical nuances today. Some other cool examples of how I'm seeing it. I mean, I think drones, virtual reality, and wearables are the three tech verticals where about 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of early. I think drones was kind of the first on the block, and now drones are kind of becoming less of a, oh, that's cool, I'd like to have that. It's more of like, no, are you kidding me? You don't have a drone program? Granted, there's still quite a bit of room for adoption. Virtual reality as well, 10 years ago was still very early, but now the cost of the hardware has come down significantly, and the software, the graphics, and everything are very operationally relevant. And then wearables, I think, are that next one that are kind of maybe still a couple years away from being widespread. But drones, I mean, let's say for an example, drone as a first responder, DFR. Chula Vista PD was the first one on the block that really got that going, and everyone kind of knows Chula Vista. Actually, I met I have his card in my pocket as I met him this week. I met Don Redman, who's now with Brink, but he was kind of like the godfather of the first DFR.
Yeah,
I know I really, kudos to him. I'm getting him on the podcast. You might need to get him on yours.
I will.
But he really kind of showed that, hey, if we can navigate the proper FAA channels, and that again, one of the challenges with a drone is that it requires someone on scene to be there on stick time, and again, you only have so much labor within the fire truck. I mean, you've got anywhere from 2 to 4 people responding on a truck, and if you're taking someone out of commission, that means they're not able to be on scene with carrying hose or doing inspection or going in and doing proper going into the building and getting people out, whatever the task may be at hand on scene. Whereas now at DFR, there's different nuances where you can apply for the proper licenses and be able to allow someone at a remote location that has the proper licenses to be able to deploy this drone and then be able to stream that drone off a range of different commercial off-the-shelf softwares. One that I like to use quite a bit called DroneSense, and you can just have the drone stream to your phone, to a computer, and allowing everyone to know, get birds, the eye in the sky, bird in the sky before you get there. And there are now departments all across the country using DFR, and I think DFR, if you ask anyone in the drone space, that's sort of like the next wave of significant blue ocean in there. Because then there's other nuances of BVLOS and different types of DFR, whether you're using radar or a VO, and there's the IAFC IAFF working group led by Coy Kessler and Jeff Pritchard, and I think kind of to finish this drone thought, one thing that I'm most excited about is that Jeff Pritchard from Scappoose Fire, he worked closely with Dr. Laura Moore Merrill when she was with the U.S. Fire Administration, and they got this course to be approved at the National Fire Academy. Of course, it was on pause. Now it's back. But starting in August, they're going to have this whole trainer instructor course on how to truly operate drones within public safety and all these different nuances of like treating drones no different than your fire apparatus. And I think that's a huge win of, again, the drone is not just a toy. It is a life-saving tool, just like your axe, just like your PPE, just like your truck. And now the training, we're training officers and we're training, building certifications around it. So granted, yeah, it did take 10, 15 years. And I think the challenge for innovators in the fire services, how can we shrink that 10 to 15 years more to like 5 to 7 at the speed of change? So yeah, that's probably been the best example. And then I guess another quick one on virtual reality. You've seen now, again, this is different, but I know as I'm raising a new son, one of the challenges I know with like contact sports, they say, hey, you can still do contact sports, but instead of getting all these repeated head trauma contacts in practice, why don't you just simulate practice in a way that doesn't have the extreme trauma or all the real hits, but you still need to obviously get some practice. And think about it with your SCBA and your gear. That's one aspect of it. If you could practice all these things without getting all the wear and tear in your gear and in causing all the physical trauma to your own body, that's, there's a lot of health and wellness value there. Granted, you still need to do live fire training. This is not replacing it, but it's saying, what if you could do more training and augment some of your training with using various haptic systems, different VR headsets, and different scenarios of donning and doffing your PPE, approaching a fire scene with smoke coming out of the Alpha Bravo corner on the 4th floor, and kind of playing Monday morning quarterback. So you're seeing departments, and actually probably the best research to check out that is the National Association of Fire Training Directors. Ken Willett has led a whole how to integrate immersive learning within public safety, and that was a NIST grant. It's kind of just finishing out, but they're building this whole roadmap about how to actually integrate immersive learning within the training academy. And it's not just words on paper. It's not just kind of pie in the sky. It's like it's happening at departments across the country. Connecticut Fire Training Academy, PJ Norwood is one that I would recommend checking out. He's implemented all sorts of immersive learning, and they're having all sorts of measurable impacts in terms of showing training is happening at an increased rate. People they have rewritten how to judge people and how to understand the efficacy of training because it is different. But it's now caught up to where training is getting better and it's happening more often. So that's a major win.
Let me go backwards on these two. I want to comment on both the virtual reality training and the drone space. I think on the virtual reality training, I just think back to my own experience as a firefighter. And yes, we always trained every day when we could, but there was never enough time. There was never enough diversity. A lot of training is more simple, basic stuff that we just do every day. And especially the more dangerous training, and I'll just pick simple things. I mean, even, ventilating a roof of a 3-story building and doing it safely. Practicing that has a good chance of getting somebody who falls or gets injured or does other things. If you could practice that 500 times in virtual reality before you go out and practice it, in person, you're probably going to be much better at doing some of those things and bringing the right equipment and holding it correctly and taking the right skills, especially if that VR training is being graded or judged and followed up, and there's going to be improvement. And I think the future is going to be actually, you went out on a three-alarm structure fire last night, and we had 18 firefighters on this scene, and everybody had different roles. But for me as a firefighter, I might have only had one role last night. But could I put on my VR headset and review my role? And no different than an NFL football player who reviews all that video and tape from yesterday, we're going to have video and VR and other things to be able to review that and see what I could have done better and even judge myself to say, hey, these are three areas I could have done better. But also maybe I get in the role of a firefighter who was next to me or a firefighter in a different role that I wasn't doing the engineer role. I wasn't doing, an outside or inside rescue role or other things. And so, being able to really experience that in real time. And then we have to be completely honest that even in most fire departments today, outside of our busiest cities, there's still a lot of downtime where there's a lot of VR training that could be done, both on and off duty for that matter, where people could get better and smarter, both in volunteer and in paid professional full-time departments. And so,
Absolutely. And
so many
Bobby Holden
opportunities.
once told me when he saw this, he was, and I don't know if he said this, but it's all about how can you get the sets and reps. And,
Yep.
it's a challenge when if you have to suit up and go out to a training academy and get on a bus and then do double pay, like paying overtime and double pay, and it's just it can be a strain on everything. But if granted, and some of this VR stuff, it's not free, but you have seen some of these now. Actually, this may be another conversation, but the software as a service and subscription models of it is the fire service open to that kind of pricing model? I think you've started to see yes, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I know sometimes we're like, I'd rather just pay for like 3 years up front. But having said that, the cost of this stuff is now significantly less, and it's not like, hey, we're asking you for 50K up front. It's kind of like, hey, here's a $5,000 to $10,000 license for plus a hardware, and it's a 5 grand a year type thing to have your department of 75 firefighters have access to training nonstop. And something like that doesn't seem like completely unreasonable anymore.
No, cost is no longer the barrier to this kind of technology, I don't believe. And I do believe we have to embrace software as a service. We have to embrace cloud-based solutions. We have to embrace, wireless-based solutions for that matter, for much of what this is, whether it's headsets, tools, and other things that we're doing. And the other thing, and just to get into the technology purchasing side of this for a minute, because at the end of the day, if we can't get it in the hands of firefighters, it doesn't matter. We need to make sure that we provide help, and this is where fractional CTOs or CIOs or fractional chief procurement officers can help departments, look at different ways of doing things. If we've always bought things with capital budgets and operational budgets for very small things only, how do we look at that differently? How do we make sure we're getting a good deal? And getting a fractional, fire service CTO leader in there that can help you procure the right tools that you need in a different way that are very cost effective and negotiate those or have the right competition or get them off the right backdrop contract, whether that's Sourcewell or other GPOs that are out there that can help people, not get ripped off when it comes to buying technology. There's lots of options today.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's from my experience on the industry side, we explored a range of different um, non-traditional grants. Of course, there's the AFG grants and the Firehouse sub grants. I think people are familiar with that, but we've had some pretty solid success with a lot of the private grants, looking at particularly there's those grants that I forget the exact name, but whenever rails go through your town, there's a lot of grants are there, and then really any oil or a lot of like power and industrial type companies all have grants for those surrounding areas for first responders. So that helped unlock a lot of different opportunities for Darley with some of the virtual reality and drone technologies. And um, but yeah, I think it's also probably from maybe the one other thing that I've seen from now some of the work with Ascent Integrated Tech with some of the smartwatch wearables is how to interface with not just the fire chief, but also the firefighter, the captain, and then creating the materials to help go to city council to be able to showcase about here's the value, here's the measurable reduction in potential and negative health impacts. Here are our ability to have increased situational awareness and coming up with both quantitative and qualitative insights that they can go to city council more effectively and say, hey, this is why we need it, and this is why we need to include this in the budget next year. And granted, I know budgets are tight, and TJ, you know this well, but at the same time, if there is a proper logical value prop. And it's not like you're asking for, I know a new truck for a couple $1 million is challenging, but some of this new tech, if you're asking for ten to $50,000 and if you have a good value prop, um, there's definitely there's a lot of times where money's in the budget. I know not always, but a lot of times there is if you have the right story.
Yeah, there's funding to be had there. There's vacancy funding. There's other things that could certainly deal with most of these projects. And you also have to look at the risk reward. I mean, one injured firefighter falling off a roof is going to cost 10 times more than any of these virtual reality training programs, right? One firefighter death or a life-changing injury, because there wasn't enough training, which we all know can happen, that is more than probably 100 times or 1,000 times what some of these technologies can cost. So there's definitely improvements that can be made. I
Yeah.
think I'll go back to drones for a minute. I think you did a very good job of highlighting how, drones as a first responder or DFR programs, as we refer to them, are kind of the new norm. Everybody kind of knows it's expected to have them. It's expected to have them not just in fire, but police and EMS as well. And a lot of these programs, I think, I'm going to put a plug in for this, they're public safety wide or even city-wide programs that can help police, fire, emergency medical services, public works, all sorts of parts of a city or county government. And I think they are the expectation today. I think to your point, the most expensive and biggest piece that held people back prior to a true DFR program was like one drone, one person standing on scene, on site, had to get there off duty, on duty. Some of these drones were personal drones and not department drones, like all sorts of history to where we got to. But I think, post Chula Vista and the first big, 10, 15 DFR programs, Montgomery County, others that have gone to multiple rooftops, have gone to hiring contractors and support personnel that can fly them, companies like Skyfire and others that do this as a service for, entire communities. That is the future. And we need to look at it in the light of, recruitment and retention are still the biggest issues for police, fire, and emergency medical services agencies in this country. And these are force multipliers, not just because you don't necessarily need to have a sworn person flying them anymore, because they can be flown by non-sworn personnel. And we're getting to where AI is doing that. I mean, Skyfire, it went from flying one drone autonomously to 5 to 10. I know they're working on 25 now. And when you can do that beyond visual line of sight, and you can do that in multiple parts in a city, it becomes much more cost effective to respond to every critical 911 call, to be able to get eyes on that scene right away. And so it really changes, I think, the financial equation, the staffing equation that's there. But that's what works today, and it's
Mhm.
rapidly changing. Where we're going to be in 12 months could be twice as far along
And I
as.
think the way you said it, that's the best way to phrase it. And that DFR isn't this, it's not necessarily drone in the sky. And yes, it does give you eyes on the situation before you get there, but it's allowing you to optimize your minimal staff resources. You're already struggling to have you're 5 spots short, and you need this drone in the sky. But what if you could contract to a third party company for an affordable rate to allow you to, whenever you need it, to have a video drone stream to your phone and tablet at a moment's notice without needing to have a person responsible for it. Granted, there's of course a cost to it, but I think that sort of narrative is what's important when thinking about, again, it's not just a toy, it's more than a tool. It's a significant piece of your operations that can be augmented with a combination of internal and external support.
Absolutely. And everybody's understaffed, right? Nobody's at 100% perfect staffing. We know that. So we're not about replacing jobs. We're actually about augmenting the staff that we have. The biggest thing I've seen when I've talked to chiefs, both police and fire, of real DFR programs is the amount of calls where they would have sent an army of people, right? A fire engine, a ladder truck, 2 ambulances, a battalion chief, and a drone gets there and realizes it's a non-call. I mean, it's not even a real call, and you can cancel them and put them back in service. I mean, on paper, just the tens of thousands of dollars saved, but the resources being available for a real call, because that was not a real call, happens all day, every day in almost every community. The second thing is, if a drone were to get there in less than 60 seconds, which in most cities that can happen today, having the ability to see it is a serious call and there is extrication needed, or a aeromedical helicopter is needed, and that's dispatched at minute 1 versus minute 10 or 20,
Yeah.
very different outcome.
You hear that phrase, what, but as by the crow flies, it's 1 mile by the crow flies. But when you're talking about a city, and granted, I live in Chicago, and it took me literally an hour to go 3 miles yesterday to get out of the city. I mean, granted, there's terrible traffic on the 9094, But yeah, when you think about being able to get eyes in the sky immediately and then really knowing what you're looking at, like, do we actually need to deploy anyone? Okay, actually, we need to deploy the helicopter, or actually, false alarm, stay at home, and be ready for the next call. So again, so many different little nuances there that are more than just some of the what you see on a spec sheet of a drone.
Correct. But they can change your staffing effectiveness 30, 40, 50% in a day with the
Yeah.
same resources, right? And so we just have to be so much smarter about that, I think. And um, I'm going to switch this into probably our final topic that we'll wrap up with today. I could talk to you for 10 hours, Kevin, so I guess I have to be better about wrapping this one up here. But when I think about what's coming in the future, and I'm going to go back to this core issue of recruitment and retention, and generational wise, I'm a Gen Xer. Good news is we're tough as could be, and grew up drinking from the fire hose and staying out till the street lights came on, and not really being too worried about comfort creatures or creature comforts at the end of the day. And then we go into millennials, we go into Gen Z, and we go into the next generation of firefighters. And the good news is, I think the embracing of technology and innovation is happening so much faster today, not just because the technology is moving faster, but I think that digital natives are becoming firefighters today, right? They've grown up with this technology. And so, really, really important that we think about what's coming next, and what should government leaders, if you're a city manager, a county manager, a county commissioner, a mayor, what should they be thinking about is coming next, and they should be prepared for?
Well, I'm glad you touched on the different generations, and from the ones we see today, from boomers to Gen X, to myself being a millennial born in 1989, to Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and actually my son, who's just born in March, is officially part of Gen Beta. So we got the next generation coming online.
Sure.
I mean, I think the simplest thing I would say is just embracing that, like, generational differences are a real thing. And I think it's always actually probably one of my favorite examples of this. John Tippett from the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation was giving a presentation at uh, the COG conference in DC last March, and he had this quote, and I'm gonna kind of butcher it, but it was this quote on the presentation that talked about um, this generation doesn't know what they're doing. They don't have manners. They just don't get it, and they're just like really insensitive. They're super sensitive, and they're just like a bunch of crybabies, and the work ethic's terrible. And John was like, When do you think this quote was said?" And you would have probably thought it was boomers saying it about millennials, probably, if I had to guess. But it was a quote from like 1910 talking about the previous generation. And sort of like, it's almost like this tale as old as time, of it's always like, oh, just like not the way it used to be. Or,
Mhm.
oh God, like, if of course it isn't the way it used to be. Time changes, the way that what we consume changes, the way that we use devices and smartphones has completely changed everything. Like, everything is going in this natural human cycle and completely changing every 10, 15 years. And I kind of have a hot take that I've been saying out loud, and I've heard about it in the European Fire Service, but I believe that fire chiefs should have term limits. I believe in all situations where we need the top tier leadership in the proper roles for 10, 15 years ish. I don't know what that number is, but unless you are actively consuming and accepting that you don't know what you don't know, and you know that you need to keep learning, you are just doing a disservice to your department. And I say that in the nicest way possible, and that I thank everyone for their service, but just thinking about the external threats, from looking at solar panels, lithium-ion battery fires, lightweight construction materials, to then the other dynamic of individuals with all their different smartphone devices and backup, backup battery chargers and micromobility, on top of just how the way people are gathering, just and what people are saying, and how they work and work from home, like, stuff just has changed and continues to change. And unless you're constantly changing yourself, every generation is different, and the external and internal threats are different. And I think that, and from what I heard in the European Fire Service, and maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know there's a process where after you've been in the fire leadership for 10 years, you move down to a row below, a tier below you, and train the next fire chief. And it's not that you're being demoted; it's just sort of part of this life cycle of, you have your time when you're the top dog, and then you need to continue to train that next top dog while you're still there. And that's kind of the whole ongoing retention process. And so I think that's my sort of mini meandering hot take on all that, and then just continuing to embrace that Gen X is very different than our millennials. Millennials are very different than Gen Z, and so on and so forth. But that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of nuances and strength of generational differences, and especially with how different generations can work together. And if you try and put it in the box and force it act like it's not a thing, then you're probably just setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, I think it's so much more important for us to recognize what's there and take the beauty of that and get the most out of it. When I look at the younger generations today, their ability to leverage technology is greater than mine, and I'm a tech nerd, right? And so I think being able to embrace that as we bring these new technologies to bear is critical. And I think all of us need to embrace different levels of technology and different generations being a part of those decisions when we talk about implementing technology. What tools should we have? It shouldn't just be a bunch of gray-haired men and women that are making that decision.
Yep, absolutely. And so yeah, I mean, I think the generational differences are one that cannot be ignored, and I think more and more departments are starting to embrace that. But at the same time, I think one thing I struggle with, and the reason why I started saying that hot take I just had is when I talk to some of these different battalion chiefs and deputy chiefs and whomever, who seem to be pretty forward thinking and excited about the tech, but they're just like that would never work in my department, and I'm just like, why? And they're like, my chief, and I'm like, what do you mean? And usually my next question is, how long's your chief been there? And usually it's like 20 years,
Yeah.
25 years been the chief. And it's like, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. No, it's pretty obvious, and I think that's an important question to raise. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Lori Moore Merrill, who you mentioned earlier, not just for all of her recent work, but years ago she gave a talk on generational differences in the fire service and Metro Fire Chiefs. And I know she's given this talk a number of times, but nobody better to ever help fire chiefs understand how to embrace those differences than Lori. She's just amazing, and so.
One note on Dr. Lori Moore Merrill as well, who is just such a inspiration to me. And every time I talk with her, I feel like I could like run through a brick wall through just what I'm excited about to work on. But she had a slide at TSI 2 years ago and was talking about technology in the fire service, and it showed fire sprinklers, it showed seat belts, it showed automatic door closures, it showed the kind of like automatic HVAC duct closer, and it was all these kind of like pieces of and kind of tools. And she was thinking like her point was that if we can't even use these technologies and we're not using these technologies to the fullest, like how are we going to continue to build on and add some of these other new technologies? And Dr. Burt Clark, he talks a lot about it too. It's like if you can't even put on your damn seatbelt, what is the other new drone or VR system going to do for you? And there's a lot of truth in that, just in everything in life. Like if you don't do the basic fundamentals well, and if you want to have this AI system, if your inputs aren't good and your fundamentals aren't good, none of this other new technology but on top of it is going to be a silver bullet to help you accomplish your goals.
100%. I think that's a great place to end. And I think that great message for everybody in public safety. A, wear your seatbelt. B, we have technology that saves a lot of lives and we still don't use it all the time and we have to. And C, there's a lot of fun stuff coming. So Kevin, thanks for joining us from the lake house here today. We appreciate your time and have an awesome weekend.
Thanks, TJ. I'm looking forward to when we run it back again.
Sounds good. We will. Talk
Have a good
soon.
one. See ya.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye.